Okay, good evening. Devorah, you have a seat? You're right there, perfect. Okay, good evening. Mary comes down. Laila Tov, my friends. Susan, how are you? You good? Welcome, Nancy. Happy birthday. Oh, happy birthday to Devorah. That's right. Happy birthday, Devorah. Yes, yes, Baruch Hashem. Okay. We are ready, my friends, for lesson 2 of this fascinating journey into the lessons and the values and the ethics of all of humanity as taught by Torah. Today we will be discussing a very important question. Is morality obvious? And of course, I'll begin with a joke. I will lead into the main part of our conversation tonight, which is about this guy who is preparing for his funeral. Today I was at a meeting about legacy giving. If you want to be part of a legacy gift, ensure the future of Judaism in our community, you can speak to me afterwards. But this is about the funeral. And he calls up the rabbi. He says, Rabbi, what would you charge for a really beautiful, heartfelt, emotional funeral? Now, the rabbi knows his customers. He knows this guy is as stingy as they come. He's never donated. He's never been part of any campaign. So he sees an opportunity. So he says, depends what you want. If you want my super deluxe package, 10 grand. A super deluxe package, what does that get? It says for 10 grand, not only will I wax eloquent about you, and not only will I praise you up and down to the sky and back, I will cry hot tears in sadness at the loss that a community faces at your passing. Wow, that's pretty good. The rabbi will cry at my funeral, but he's still pretty cheap. 10 grand, He says, okay, what's the next package? He says 5 grand. So what does a 5 grand package get you? So for 5 grand, I'll still say the most beautiful things about you. I'll still go on and on about your qualities and your greatness, but no tears. Okay. Says 5 grand, still a little expensive. He says, what's the cheapest? What's a regular package? Says $500. So okay, $500. What do I get for $500? Rabbi says, so for $500, I say the truth. Okay. So, my friends, today we're going to try and figure out the truth about what is a person's value, what is a person's worth. And we're going to start, because that's one of the 7 commandments we're going to be talking about tonight. But let's first just remind ourselves where we're holding in this journey and where we're trying to go. So as you remember from last week, there are 7 universal laws, known as the 7 Noahide laws, that are the foundation of morality for all of humankind. And as we already explained last week, we, the Jewish people, are entrusted with the task of teaching these laws to humanity. At Mount Sinai, part of the covenant that God made with us was that we would be the ones who would teach teach ethics and values, not only to ourselves, but to everyone in the universe. And we started last week by going through the first 2 of these 7, talking about the commandment to believe in monotheism and one God, and the prohibition against cursing God. And as we explained last week, that when you have this core foundation of a tranquil society founded in this one invisible, non-tangible, physical source of life and source of blessing and source of income and source of happiness, we're not stressed out, we're not anxious, we're not fighting against each other, we don't feel the need to be here and there and everywhere, because we're not cursing God. We understand the one wholesomeness of the one God that is good and desires good, etc. All that we talked about last week. And today, what we're going to do is going to discuss 2 things. First, we're going to explore yet another reason, not discussed last week, why belief in God is so important to living a healthy, ethical, moral lifestyle. Because one of the most famous obvious questions people ask all the time is, can't you be a good person without believing in God, right? Many people will tell you, I'm an atheist or I'm an agnostic. I don't go to synagogue, but I'm a good person. I would never hurt anybody. I would never do anything wrong to anybody. So first we need to discuss a whole different perspective on why God is a foundation for a proper moral, ethical lifestyle. And that will be the perfect segue into discussing the next 3 of the Noahide laws about not stealing, not killing, and not causing pain to an animal. Okay? So, let us first begin on text number 1 on page 47, which will be the beginning, actually start to be a continuation of a text that we read last week. If you remember last week, well, you can give this, there, you want to pass this to Michael? Actually, I need it back afterwards because someone didn't get the book, but okay. But it's actually, so page number, where are we here? Page number 47. Says the Rambam, and this is a continuation of what we read last week with the Rambam. Maimonides writes that every single person has an obligation, every Jew has an obligation to teach these teachings to the world. Says the Rambam, a pious Gentile is defined as one who commits to following the 7 mitzvahs and is meticulous in their observance, and they do so because they recognize that they are God's commandments to the descendants of Noah, as subsequently written in the Torah and relayed by Moses. A pious Gentile has a share in the world to come. If, however, a Gentile observes these laws simply because they are sensible and dictated by logic, they do not have the status of a ger toshav, which is a resident foreigner, and are not reckoned among the pious Gentiles, but rather they're considered from their wise ones, rather only from their wise ones. What is the Rambam saying over here? Maimonides is telling us that if the reason why a person keeps these laws and believes in one God, it doesn't kill, it doesn't steal, etc., is because they know that this is what God said, they are righteous, they are pious, they are wise, they will get a share in the world to come, they are from the Chasidei Umos HaOlam, from the righteous of the Gentiles, they're wonderful. However, Maimonides is also telling us that if a person does not consider these laws to be godly laws, he or she still does them, but only because they're sensible, they're logical, they make sense to not kill and steal, but not because of any fundamental concept of God. Such a person who does not acknowledge the divine origins of the mitzvah is only considered among the wise, but he is not righteous, he is not pious, and that will not earn them a share in the world to come. Although if you do something right, you still get rewarded, whether or not you have the right intentions, but let's not get too complex. But this is what the Rambam is writing. So the question is going to be, but why? Why? Why do you need to accept the premise that I don't kill because God said so in order to earn a portion of the world to come? Shouldn't the fact that you live an ethical lifestyle and you don't hurt creatures and you don't commit adultery and you don't steal, shouldn't that automatically be enough to make you a righteous, pious person? I'll tell you even more interestingly, that the way we just read this text number 1, where the Rambam writes that such a person is not considered righteous or pious, they're only from among the wise, is in the original version of the Rambam. However, most printed editions of the Rambam have a slightly different version of one word. Instead of the word being Ella, the word is velo. It's literally a difference of like one letter. Velo means, and not even among their wise. So according to many other printed versions of the Rambam, a person who lives an ethical lifestyle, but does it only because they think that it makes sense, and not because God said so, not only are they not pious, they are not even among the wise of the nations. And so we need to understand this. How do we justify saying that in order to be wise, it's not enough to have an intellectual idea or vision of what a moral society looks like, but you need to trust that these come from God? Okay? It's a good question, right? Something that many people, when you start talking to people about God, it's almost the first thing people will tell you. I don't need God to be a good person. I'm a good person without God. So what are they missing? What's missing that you need God for? So of course I'm a rabbi, and rabbis answer a question with a question. So if I just answer the question, that'll be boring. So instead, let me ask you a completely seemingly unconnected question, but I want you to answer, and let's see where that takes us, okay? One of the famous ethical dilemmas that are talked about, and I actually posted on Facebook earlier today. It was fascinating to see the responses that I got. Imagine you are standing on the beach. On one side, you see a person who is drowning, a stranger you never met before. On the other side is your dear, loyal dog. Someone give me a name of their dog. I need a name. Hava? Chava. Chava or Chava? Chava. That sounds like a Jewish thing. Give me like a dog name, like Bubbles or like chocolate. What? What's your name? Rusty. There you go, Rusty. Thank you. Is that your dog's name? Oh, you don't have a dog. Okay. But that's a good name, Rusty. Okay, I like it. I'm looking for like a dog name. Rusty. Thank you. So you got Chava, who's a stranger. You don't know her name actually, just a person you never met before in your life. And you have Rusty. And Rusty is your loyal dog that's been with you for 10 years, waits there for you every day when you come home from work and you're standing there by the door with her little puppy eyes. I assume she's a puppy, whatever. And, or she barks and jumps like a chihuahua. And you only have one lifesaver, and you cannot save both of them. Of course, on Facebook, everyone's trying to say I can save both because the dog can swim, and I'll send the lifesaver to the person because he'll know how to use it. You can only save one. The tide is coming. You can save one. Who would you save? Now, pretend no one's listening. Pretend no one would judge you for this. And if you ask yourself the question honestly, and it helps if you own a pet, because it's hard to imagine what a lot of people have for their pets if you don't have a pet. So imagine if you have a pet and the love you feel for the pet, which is the one that you would save? Anyone want to share in the feedback? Ooh. Yeah, yes, Wendy. Okay. In your heart, you want to save the dog, but you know intellectually the right answer is the person. Okay. Well, do you know why is the right answer the person? Who decided the right answer is the person? Yeah. Like, why do you think that's the right answer?
Because I think that the life of a person is probably considered higher than an animal.
The life of a person considered higher than the life of an animal. Okay. The Torah says a human being is a human being. Okay. And that's a self. You say that it is as if that's obvious. Meaning, what's the difference between a human being and a dog? A soul. Okay. We're made in the image of a God. Okay. You'd have to live with the guilt that you didn't save that person, although some may have guilt they didn't save their dog. Right? I know people have guilt if they didn't save their dog. Absolutely. Absolutely. I was once called to someone's house. No one here knows, but whatever. And she wanted if I do funerals for dogs. Serious question. She wanted her dog is dying. They're going to put the dog to sleep at like someone's coming to the house. There's like a couple. They come to the house, a very very serene setting. So they're putting the dog to sleep the next day, whatever. It's at 12 o'clock. Well, I do the funeral for the dog afterwards. They're buying a coffin in their backyard. So I said I don't do funerals for dogs. It's not in my rabbinic training. But I'm glad to come over and be present at the time and just to give support and comfort. And they want me to say prayers with the dog. So I don't pray for the dog, but I'll come support you in this time of emotional distress. So I was actually there when they came and put the dog to sleep. We actually put on the phone before. And thank God the coffin that they ordered Amazon didn't come in time. So I wasn't part of the burial process. But yeah, there was a lot of emotions. But I want to explain something. Obviously, if you believe in God, then it's like you say, God made it to God's image. But let's say we take God out of the picture. We're trying to have a conversation if you have ethics and values without God. Without God. Is there any inherent difference in an animal and a human?
Humans live longer.
Humans live longer than dogs. Okay. I don't know if that proves that they're more valuable, but okay, interesting, okay. Animals don't have souls. Here is, so get ready for this. This is a sneak preview to JLI's upcoming fascinating facts of Kabbalah. I don't know if that's what the course will be called. I'm on the editorial team of their next year's fascinating Kabbalah. And in the first lesson, we're talking about if animals have souls and what kinds of doggy souls go to doggy heaven and all that. We will be talking about it from a Kabbalistic perspective. If they cross the rainbow, I don't want to give it all away. You will be shocked because I was shocked to see what Kabbalah says about this. But we'll talk about that, God willing, sometime next year. We'll talk about it next year. Let's not get too distracted. Next year. Okay, next year. You have to sign up. When we come to that course on fascinating Kabbalah, sign up. Okay, anyway. Let's move on. So the first question is there a right or wrong answer? You say yes, because you're coming from a very religious perspective. But the question is, once you take God, obviously, and by the way, you're 100% correct. if you're coming at this from a religious perspective. So obviously, I'll give you a spoiler alert now. I also think that there's an objectively right or wrong answer to the question, but that's because I'm coming at this from a religious perspective. What we want to accomplish right now for the first part of this discussion tonight is to understand those that think they don't need God to be moral and upright. For that person, for the person who thinks I can be a good person without God in my life, is such a person able to objectively find a right or wrong answer to the question, should I save the stranger I don't know or the dog that I love? That's what we want to accomplish. Yeah.
Or a person does rely on their own logic, because anything can be rationalized away.
Oh, very good.
Entire civil societies that influence one another, and everything is acceptable. Like that soldier that wants to go into the soldier today was arrested.
The soldier was arrested where?
Talking about how he wanted to go into a synagogue and shoot every Jew.
I didn't see that. I didn't see the news today.
By social pressure.
100. Mindy, you are 100% correct, and you almost could take away my class, and you can come to. Okay, so what are the generally speaking, when again we're still trying to understand the other side of the coin over here. Okay, so you're gonna have to be patient and allow us to work our way to understanding why we need what we have. So for someone that doesn't have God in their lives, for the I don't know, the vast majority of Americans, I think that they're good people, and they also think that they don't need God to give them their inner barometer of right and wrong, which I think is the majority of Americans. So that's what we're trying to understand tonight. Do those people have the ability to objectively answer this question, who would you save? What do you think? And besides from me, what do you think? Are you able to, without religion, without God, are you able to objectively answer this question? Yeah.
Dogs know how to swim.
Dogs know how to swim. So now you're going into technical, the dog can save himself. There's a the questions where there's a riptide, and people also, many people know how to swim. Okay. So you can answer the dog can swim. Okay, fine. You're avoiding really the core fundamental question by getting yeah.
Human beings are self-aware.
Human beings are self-aware. Okay. Okay. So David's saying an interesting perspective. Animals don't have the self-awareness that humans have. Okay, very good. Okay. Now, generally speaking, I'm going to move on. Because I know I'm going to run out of time the way we're going. So there's a more general question. If you don't have God, and you're one of the majority of Americans that believe you're a good person, so what gives ethics its authority? Where do you base your moral values and opinions on? So I'm going to save time by waiting for you to tell us. What are the general things that people say? A, logical. I use my brain to figure it out. Some will tell you, that I have a conscience. And some will tell you, look at society standards and follow cultural norms, etc. And tonight we're going to go through each of these three things, the limitations of logic, of conscience, and the society, based upon, in the framework of the question, do you save the dog or do you save the stranger? Okay. Now, for a strict rationalist, using just logic, it's hard to explain how the human is fundamentally different than the animal. Although David did give a good point that humans have self-awareness. I don't know that animals don't have self-awareness. I would imagine they also, not in the same way. And of course, humans and animals are not exactly the same. But if you don't believe in the soul or being in the image of God, so a human is a highly complex biological organism, and an animal is also a fairly complex biological organism. Maybe not as complex as a person, pretty close. Especially animals, dogs, they're pretty close. So they can't speak in the same way we do. They're not as smart as us, but they're pretty complex biological organisms. So why do we not? There's not that much of a fundamental qualitative distinction in between the human being and the dog. It's just like a cat and a mouse. Is there any difference between a cat and a mouse? On the ecological perspective, is there anything fundamentally different between a cat and a mouse? Not really. I mean, we don't like mice because they eat our food, and cats, I don't know, I don't like cats either per se. Don't tell anyone, but So cats and mice not fundamentally different. They're just ones, obviously, cats are more advanced and they're more sophisticated than mice are, but they're just on the totem pole, if you will, of animals. Mice are down here somewhere, and cats are up there. And humans are up here. But there's no qualitative fundamental difference between one and the other. And in fact, for reasoning to give into ethical conclusions, you must rest on a premise that logic can't explain. So, for example, the beginning of the Declaration of Independence, how does it start? Page 50. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah? This is the very foundation of the American Revolution against King George III. And yet, is this premise that we hold to be self-evident? Is it empirical? Is it proven in any way? No. By the way, the word self-evident is a wonderful phrase because self-evident sounds very sophisticated. It sounds like you offered proof without actually offering any proof. It's like self-evident. Okay. That's a great way of winning an argument without actually saying anything of substantial value. Self-evident. So self-evident that all men are created equal. By the way, until a few years before, it wasn't self-evident. All these Americans believed in a system. We have kings and royal blood, and you have those born to be subjects and serve the royal blood. And even within America, you had the blacks that were being enslaved by the whites. So self-evident, but they weren't actually treating everyone exactly the same. And that's why a British publication at the time called the Gentleman's Magazine, which was around from 1731 until 1922, one of the premier English publications, a monthly magazine, wrote mocking the Americans, text to be, we hold, they say, these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. In what are they created equal? Is it in size, strength, understanding, figure, civil or moral accomplishments, or situational life? In what way are all men equal? I'm not equal to you. I'm not the same height as you. I'm not the same weight as you. I'm not the same brains as you. I'm not the same personality as you, the same speed. Like, in what way are we the same? How are we equal? And so the same question is pretty much in everything. In what way we have these foundational principles upon which we build our logical conclusions. But we have to, if you're starting at the beginning, at the premise, what indeed is the premise? Let me show you a cute video that brings out this idea.
Mommy, I want a cookie. Can I take one?
No, we'll all have some after dinner
Why can't I just take cookies right now?
because those cookies aren't yours and we all live together, so we have to be fair.
Why not be fair? Why can't it just be mine? I'm hungry.
Because people would get upset. Wouldn't you be upset if Ben or Sarah ate all the cookies?
Yes, I'll literally cry.
We don't get people upset for no reason, do we?
What if there is a good reason? Like eating a cookie is a good reason.
It's just wrong.
Why is it wrong?
Because it just is.
That's not an answer. Why?
Okay, let's try this again. People matter, so their feelings matter.
Why do people matter?
People matter because they're human beings.
Says who? If I don't agree that people matter, can I take the cookies?
No.
Why not?
Because I said so? Okay, fine. You want a real answer? It's because then nothing works anymore. If people don't matter, then fairness doesn't matter. Rules don't matter. Then the whole idea of mine and yours falls apart.
So it's not a real rule. It's just to make things work.
Asking why about everything can be fun, but at a certain point we need to accept some rules, even if we can't prove them.
Like what?
Like that people matter. That hurting someone needs a good reason. And that you can't just decide that fairness doesn't count.
So it's like the rules before the rules.
Exactly.
But wait, who makes those rules?
Okay, it's an excellent video because it brings out an extremely important point, which is that you can have a tremendous amount of logic in a society, but all the rules and all the logic are based on a premise. So if you started with a moral premise, so logical deductions or logical assumptions, going from that starting point will end up being good. But if your moral premise to begin with is wrong, all the logic in the world is going to just build upon a rotten premise. And what will be your conclusion? A rotten conclusion. It's almost like imagine you follow the best recipe in the world, you take a 5-star Michelin recipe, but use rotten ingredients. You can follow the recipe to the T, but if you're cooking with rotten ingredients, even if you have all the skill and all the finesse and all the talent of the most expert baker or chef, better than my daughter Mushka, which is impossible. Let's just say you need to make better than Mushka, but if you start with rotten ingredients, your cookies are not going to come out good. They're going to come out rotten. And so if you look at page 51, I'm going to show you a chart, which is going to be a number of examples where societies that had coherent logic, applied consistently, yet produced profound evil. And you know why they produced profound evil? Not because they weren't logical, intellectual, sophisticated societies. In fact, every one of these societies that we're going to talk about in a second had philosophers and intellectuals and very confident people explaining why they were right. But they all were starting on the wrong premise. So the logic only built upon that faulty beginning. So, of course, the most famous example would be Nazi Germany, where there was a rotten moral premise that human worth is determined by race and biological fitness. And so if you accept that premise, then genocide is perfectly logical. And you have the concept of chattel slavery, where there's a premise accepted by most of humanity for many thousands of years that some humans have no rights in their property that belongs to their masters. So then lifelong bondage is a totally normal, logical conclusion. And torture and cruelty to your slaves, which are your property, makes sense. And if you look back at the French Revolution, when they were killing everyone that they possibly thought the purge, the great purges, where they were killing anyone they thought might have any kind of political impurity. So if you accept the premise that political purity overrides moral limits, which is what they explained philosophically, the mass executions of innocent people make sense. And if you accept the premise, as Joseph Stalin did and the Soviet Union did, that individuals are expendable for the greater common good, which is the whole foundational principle of communism. We sacrifice the individual for the greater good. So that's a premise. Once you have that premise, you can use all the logic you want, but your starting point is rotten solid. And then you end up with the story of the Soviet Union killing millions upon millions of their own people, and the purges and the gulags, and same thing in Imperial Japan, where imperial supremacy is how you define moral worth. Again, you can do atrocities and kill prisoners of war. And even till today, I mean, J.L.I. wrote this very diplomatically, you have societies that believe in family honor. And that's a premise, that the family honor is important. And so if you're from a culture that believes in family honor or tribal honor killings are logical. Honor killings are ethical, they're moral, because this person violated the honor of the entire family. So they deserve, on a logical level, to be killed for dishonoring the family. And that exists till today. The point is, I'm not going to belabor this anymore because I think it's obvious that rational arguments can clarify, they can refine, and they can apply moral principles, but they cannot supply the first principle itself, which is why every year in the world, there's approximately 440 to 460,000 intentional homicides. Okay? That's 52 people being killed every hour on purpose, not by a car accident, 52 people being killed by people that justified and rationalized that they are justified in killing another person. Let's move on. What about the conscience? The human being is hardwired, with the possible exception of sociopaths, but let's leave that alone. We are hardwired to have a natural sense of right and wrong or of a conscience, right? We have a conscience. And we all have that voice inside us that urges us toward making moral choices and to feel guilty. Any Jewish mothers here? Feeling guilty or like some regret when we act otherwise. However, so maybe we should let our conscience guide us and let the natural voice we feel inside us, let our conscience guide us in going in the right way. Let our gut, we all have a good gut, let our gut help us know right from wrong. So let's look at the science for a second. In contemporary science, it's clear that there's two different aspects to our conscience. One's our capacity to feel, and one is the content of what we feel. Meaning, it is innate within a human being, it's a natural tendency to feel emotions. It's natural. A human being is going to feel a sense of shame, a sense of guilt, a sense of pride, a sense of regret. But what we feel, the content of what we feel, is learned. So, for example, and that comes over time, the cultural norms. So, for example, let me give you an example. We all have a desire for love and connection, right? We all want, as a human, innate sense of our conscience, we want to feel loved. Everyone will. But what kind of person will we want to be in love with? Does the fact that we all have a natural, innate need for love dictate who we will love? No. We all have an inclination that tells us that we should to do good. It's inherent that we want to do good. But what defines good or not good? That depends on the society you grew up in, depends on the culture, depends on your upbringing, depends on your home, depends on your parents. Those are the ones that taught you how to define what is considered good and what is not considered good. In other words, if I can put this into other words, want to hear a good word for this? Humans are born with the equipment, with the hardware for moral judgment, but not with the actual built-in moral code. We don't have an inherent software to know what is right and what is wrong. We just have a feeling that we want to do what's right. We have a feeling we want to be in love. But how to judge who's worthy of my love, how to judge what is right, that's not innate. That's acquired by the culture, by the education, by the society in which we grow up. So, if we use conscience, right? We agree with this? So, if we use the conscience as our barometer by which to decide if I should save the stranger drowning or should save the dog that's drowning, well, guess what? It depends where you grow up. Is there any particularly right or wrong answer? What do you feel in your gut? There'll be a big difference if you're growing up in the Bible Belt of the South, or if you're growing up in Nazi Germany, and the person drowning is a Jew, for example, where there they absolutely fed their dogs better than they fed Jews. Or if you're growing up in California, etc. So the conscience of a person would absolutely influence, the culture of the person would absolutely influence what they feel in their conscience. Yes? Makes sense? And you push back, you all agree with me. I'm watching the chat. Good evening, Ravit. Okay. By the way, that's why, the famous expression, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. Because if all conscience is relative to how I feel, so then this statement is not a problem. It's a philosophical conclusion. If we decide, based on my conscience, I'll be nice at this point in the class anyway, many young people in America today will tell you that Iran is a victim. Iran's a victim of Israeli oppression and American aggression. Iran's a victim. I mean, they killed 30,000 of their own people. They're hanging people for protesting. But if it's all about how I feel in my conscience, and I've been taught to believe that the underdog is the victim, has to be defended, and the I don't know what we call the overdog or the aggressor has to be fought, resisted. If that's my fundamental barometer of right and wrong in terms of oppressor and oppressed, of victim and victor, then once you have that as your founding premise, then your conscience will lead you to many, many intellectual decisions and many emotional feelings, because your foundation, what you've been educated, is a faulty premise. Make sense? Okay. And then we come to the third possible way that many people determine how they are good, ethical people. They consider their behavior based on the standards of the society in which we live. And that's why when I said, pretend like no one can hear your answer and answer what you think. Yeah, well, we don't do just what we think. Very often we do what we think people will approve of or won't approve of. And many times that we would inherently do something, but we're afraid of being judged for it. We're afraid of being, shunned for it. So, some people might tell you, yes, it's true that an individual person may be skewed or maybe have a wrong premise, but if you let the collective conscience of society, collectively, the majority of people, make a conclusion, and let's follow whatever the common good will come out of the common people, and that will align us with what will be right and ethical, etc. Is that true? What if we live in a society which condemns, or sorry, which condones killing for a sport? That's what the Roman gladiators did, right? And tens of thousands of people will pack into these coliseums to watch people fighting to the death, or people being fed to the lions, or people being, that was public sport. So that was absolutely considered normal by society standards at the time. Or what if a society feels that leaving unwanted infants to die on the garbage heap is considered ethical behavior? That's society has accepted that. Today we're living in a society where euthanasia is becoming more and more acceptable, and states are allowing it, Canada's allowing it. So if society allows a person to commit physician-assisted suicide, does that mean it should be okay and allowed ethically because society allows it and politicians are voting for it? I mean, Nazi Germany collectively as a society decided that genocide made sense. Because as a society, they accepted the premise that they were ethnically better than the inferior races. So if you just allow society to be your compass of ethics, you can have very flawed premises that can be accepted by society, but that doesn't prove they're right or wrong. And by the way, society doesn't stay the same. Society doesn't check. What's considered acceptable in society today, 30 years ago, would not have been accepted. If your parents, and most of you are a little older than me, but imagine if your parents would see what society looks like today, they would be turning over their graves. People today go shopping and wearing clothing or dressed, if you consider it dressed, in clothing that people wouldn't wear to the beach. You know what I'm saying? Today people are in Publix wearing less clothing than your mother would wear if she went to a swimming pool. Society is changing. Today, there's so many things that are considered societally or socially acceptable that were never considered socially acceptable before. So should that be the barometer? When the norms are always shifting, the only way to determine society, to evaluate society's behavior, is if you have a standard outside of society about which we can see, is society having a moral elevation or is society having a moral decline? So many would say that America today is having a moral decline, but you can only say that if you don't use society as your barometer. Because once you use society as a way of seeing if something is right or wrong, America's having a moral decline. Society has a new set of standards, that is the standards. Yeah.
Accepted so-called, the total values. And they use phrases like peace, and then human rights, all that. They pervert it.
Mm-hmm.
These are common, so-called accepted values that civilized societies have agreed upon, but they're perverting. They're
perverting because the core value is if it's up to people to decide what's the core value, so they pervert it exactly as you said it. Correct. Okay. Let's very quickly recap what we just said over here. If you don't have God, and you're looking to be a good person and have an ethical standard by which to live, and you want to use your logic as a way of proving right and wrong, we're proving the limits of logic, because logic can only be based upon certain foundational premises and principles that if they're wrong, well, all the logic will be wrong. If you want to use your conscience, as we already established, the conscience also, the content of your conscience is very much influenced by your culture, by your society, by your upbringing, by your parents. And society itself is constantly changing, constantly shifting, constantly new definitions and new parameters of what's right, what's wrong, what's ethical, what's defined as good, as bad, etc. And there's so many modern day examples, like I gave about it, victims and victors, and where Israel today is considered bad. Why? Because the Palestinians are oppressed. That's just, if that's your starting point, then that's all you need. Anyway, so since we have now established that not the mind alone, not the heart alone, and not even the collective society of minds and hearts together can serve as a secure foundation for defining what is right and wrong, what is considered moral, the only way we can find an answer to this question is not from within the system, but rather we need to find an answer from beyond, outside the system. And that answer is God. Okay, I know that was a big surprise. I know. You weren't expecting that one, I know. God. But I hope you understand that why this is the only way to have an objective answer to any moral question is when you can find a source that exists outside of the system. And only when we have God as our foundation can we then be confident that what we call moral is not just our own personal preference, but is actually truly, objectively right or wrong. We see this centrality, this importance of a God-based morality already on the very first day that the Jews began to accept any values and any morals. What was the first day we accepted a moral code? Mount Sinai, right? In just a few weeks will be Shavuos. We're going to celebrate the day we all stood together at Mount Sinai, and God came and gave us the Torah. And what's fascinating about the giving of the Torah, we know how did God give us the Ten Commandments? On 2 tablets. Why 2 tablets? So, of course, the famous joke is that when God went around to all other nations, and he asked the other nations if they want the Torah, each nation asked, what's written in the Torah? And God said to each nation, he told the Muslims not to commit adultery, so we don't want it. He told another nation, don't kill. The French, don't kill, we don't want it. Whatever it was, each nation, a different law. They said, no, thank you. When God came to the Jews and said, do you want the Torah? What was the Jews' first question? No, that wasn't the question. The joke is a joke. What was the first question? Not what does it say, but how much does it cost? Come on, there's no Jews in this room. How much does it cost? That's a Jew's first question, right? A guy comes knocking on your door before you even know what he's selling. How much is it? What are you asking for? How much does it cost me? That's the first. So God comes to the Jew, says, "Do you want the Torah?" Jews ask God, "How much is it going to cost?" And God says, "It's free." So Jews say, "Oh, it's free. Okay, we'll take 2 of them." Right? So we got 2 tablets. Instead of 1, we got 2. Okay. But on the serious note, because that's just a joke, why did God give us 2 tablets? I mean, yeah, we're happy, 2 for the price of 1, especially if it's free, so we're not complaining. But on a serious level, why did God give 2 tablets, 5 on one, 5 on the other? Couldn't get 1 tablet fit all 10 onto 1? Didn't have like auto fit and why 2? What's even more important is that these 2, if you were to look at all of the first 5 on 1 tablet, they're all about us and God. One God, don't use the name of God in vain, Shabbat. The other side is all about Adam lechavero, mitzvahs that are between us and our fellow man, not to kill, not to steal, not to be jealous, not to commit adultery, etc. So there's 2 side by side, and as the Rebbe writes in a beautiful letter from 1962, that without the foundation of our relationship to God, morality will lose its anchor and become erode and become distorted and collapse. Let's read this letter inside. Text number 3. The Rebbe writes, the 10 Commandments bring together 2 foundations that at first glance seem worlds apart. The opening commandment, I am your God, you shall have no other God, and so on, express and reveal the deepest truths of God's oneness. The others, by contrast, deal with seemingly simple rules like do not murder, do not steal, principles that appear obvious even to the ordinary human understanding. But the truth is that if the moral laws, even those that seem self-evident, are left to human reasoning alone, without their divine foundation and authority, human judgment driven by self-interest can twist them beyond recognition. An outright transgression can end up being rebranded as a mitzvah, perverting these concepts. Interpreting do not murder, do not steal from the standpoint of personal benefit, many nations and countless individuals have managed to justify their most horrific goals, not to mention excusing the means used to achieve them, as has been tragically demonstrated, especially in very recent times. And so this is what the Rebbe is saying, the very famous thing, that these two sets of laws, they're not just common sense. They're one set. They're one set side by side because they need each other. Interactions with other human beings, not founded upon the belief in one God, is bound to be eroded, corrupted, and destroyed. Now, it's true that we've been using fairly extreme historical examples of nations that have become corrupted and used logic to justify destroying what they consider the inferior race of the Jews. But the truth is that this matters to every single one of us, not just in Nazi Germany in the 30s or politicians that are writing laws, but each and every single one of us in our own actions, both big and small, have these everyday minor decisions that we have to face. And how often do we rationalize when we have to make a decision by saying, well, everyone else does it? Or what difference does it make what difference will my $20 make to this mega rich, filthy corporation that gets rich off the poor? Will Apple know? Will Google know? Do they care that I didn't pay $20 as opposed to that I stole someone, I copied something, whatever? Google has, I don't know how many billions of dollars they have. They don't know the difference. Or I hurt his feelings. Okay, he deserved it, right? Whatever it is. There's so many things in our lives, small decisions, where we justify it for whatever reason, however we justify it. And if we would realize that the definition of right and wrong is not how I can justify it or rationalize it, but rather it's by answering the question, what does God say about it? We will discover that many of the small decisions we make in our life might be different. Right? How many people do things? There's a famous story about this kid who was going onto the bus with his mother, and under 3 is free. So the mother says to the bus driver, this girl, she's not 3 yet. And the little girl says, that's not true, mommy. It was my birthday 3 weeks ago. I am 3. I said, shh. And so to save the $3 on the bus for now, does the bus company, do they care if one more person is riding on the bus? Is it costing the bus company any more? Are they losing any money? The bus driver is driving anyway, and they're not losing any money by you taking your kid on for free. But besides the education and telling the kid that it's okay to lie, we often justify this. It doesn't make a difference. Bus company's not losing money. This is not. I'm just giving you one example of thousands of small little decisions we make where we rationalize and justify based on our own inner logic, or based on our own inner conscience, or based on the society in which we live that justifies doing certain things, buying something, using it, and returning it. Everyone does it. So everyone does it, so it's okay, even though I'm, kind of ripping off the company by buying it for the one night and then returning it the next day. But everyone does it. If we really believe in God, then these barometers of right and wrong cannot be barometers that we use in our own personal, internal lives. Stand? I saw a great clip of Dennis Prager was talking about how he was watching with his kid on TV these riots in California. And these kids are in the mall and they're smiling at the cameras and they're looting the Apple store, they're taking all the phones and the TVs and all that. And he asks his kids, tell me, if you were able to loot and get away with it, would you loot? So he said, no. He said, why not? Well, his kid told him, it's in the 10 Commandments, you can't steal. So he said, I was very happy. Even though most parents say, I don't want my kids to say because of the Ten Commandments. Most parents will say, I want my kids to know on their own that it's wrong to steal. But he says, I don't trust people. I don't trust people. I want them to know that it's wrong to steal. But I'd rather they know that they can't steal because God says so, and they should on their own think so. Because one day the friend will tell them it's okay, and what they thought will change. Understand? It's a very important point. Okay. This, my friends, is why the answer to the first question. Why do we need God to have morals and values? Because even if something looks moral and ethical, and even if I could be very blunt, if I could, even if it quacks like a duck and what's the expression? It swims like a duck and it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it talks like a moral, ethical person and personifies itself as a moral, ethical person. It doesn't have a foundation based on something objectively right and wrong that exists outside of our own society. You don't need to look much further than the college campuses today to see how easily those people that look and sound and talk like big moral, ethical philosophizers can be so quickly confused and led astray because they're missing a rock solid foundation from something that cannot change. Okay. Clear? Clear. You're all agreeing with me. That's good. Baruch Hashem. What do we do about? Oh, very good question. What do we do about it? This is why, first of all, we need to know this for ourselves. And we have an obligation to teach this to the world in whatever context we can, in whatever circle of influence we have. But yes, we have to be led into the nations and teach people to have but it's not only on the big political pictures of Israel and whatever. It's in small decisions we make in our own lives too that we need to have this clarity. Okay. So now let's go through 3 of these 7 Noahide laws in the time that we have. Number 1, stealing. Now, you might say, stealing, that's pretty obvious, right? Stealing is probably the most obvious, logical thing that you can't do. Everyone knows stealing is wrong, right? Reminded of the joke, I love this joke about this thief who was, one year he came to Shul Yom Kippur and he was really, really inspired by the rabbi's sermon about not, doing tshuva and repenting your evil ways, and it's never too late to repent for what you sinned. So it's the night after Yom Kippur, and this town thief comes knocking on the door of the rabbi and says, Rabbi, you really inspired me with your sermon today. I decided I want to do tshuva. I want to return this entire bag is full of stolen things. I want to return it. The rabbi can't believe it. He inspired yourself to change his life and to repent for stealing. He gives him a whole bag of stuff he stole from this guy and that guy. Can't believe it. Gives him a big hug. He's so happy. Anyway, the guy leaves his house. He's going to see what time it is. We have to go to bed. He goes to look for his watch. His watch is gone. Pretty sure he was wearing it before. I said, what could it be? Where could it be? The only thing he can think of is he just gave a hug to this thief who was a pickpocket. He goes running out of the house, running down the street, chasing after this guy. He says, stop. What happened to my watch? So the guy turns around. He says, didn't you just tell me that you did tshuva and you were inspired on Yom Kippur and you want to change your ways? Why would you steal my watch? So the thief says to the rabbi, listen, Rabbi, Yom Kippur is Yom Kippur, but business is business. So, yeah, I know some Jews like that. So business is business, right? Stealing is stealing. It's wrong. It's wrong. That you would think it's wrong. But let me ask you a question. I know it's going to be a pretty obvious question, but it's not so easy to answer, actually. Why is stealing wrong? Again, besides because the Torah said so, I know that God said so, it's wrong. But if you're a good person, if you're one of the majority of Americans that don't believe that you need God to be a good person, ask them, why is stealing wrong? So what will they tell you most likely? What will the average person tell you? Say again? You worked hard to earn it, so you're by me stealing what you worked for, so I'm violating, so to say, your self right, which is exactly what John Locke, one of the very famous philosophers, would say. But then let me ask you a question. What if you didn't work for that? What if you won it in the lottery? You won the lottery. Okay, then steal it from you? You didn't work for it.
You got the luck to win.
But you didn't work for it. Let's say you're walking on the street and you found the $50 lying on the street. And I want to steal it from you. What?
to help him.
Oh yeah, Gemara. Okay, yeah, Gemara. Okay. I'm asking if you're a quote unquote ethical American.
Still you want, because you're damaging somebody else.
You're damaging somebody else. Okay. Okay, you're damaging somebody else. Okay. And by the way, that is the classic American understanding based on the philosophy of Thomas Hobbes, a 17th century English philosopher who said that if there's no common power, then there's no law. There's no law, then there's no injustice. And then basically every man has a right to everything, even to another's body. Meaning naturally, if you have something, I can take it, it's not yours. But if we have such a society, what will happen? Everyone will spend all day beating each other up and robbing each other. The society will fall apart, become total anarchy. We can't live like that. There's not a way to live a normal life. So therefore, theft is wrong because we have agreed upon the rules. That's what you're saying. So basically, I can't hurt you because then you'll come hurt me. And then if I can hurt you, and then David is even stronger than me, and then Dvorah will steal from him, and Robert will steal from her, and we'll all be stealing from each other. Pragmatic. So let me ask you a question. What about if we're stealing wouldn't hurt anybody? What about if you're stealing from a place where there's no victim? You're stealing from Google, who has $10 billion or whatever it is, and they don't know the difference.
If everybody did that, then Google would be bankrupt.
If everyone stole from Google, I mean, they have enough. I guess, theoretically, somehow not everyone can steal from them because they have your information. They're tracking you. You think you're tracking them. They're tracking you. But let's say there's no. Let's say from Annika, but there's no victim. Never.
No victims, I'll steal from a victim.
Okay, so you're saying it's like a great gateway drug. Once you steal from no victim, then you'll steal from a victim. But it's stealing from a no victim. It's a victimless theft. Let's say you're stealing when they won't know the difference. Like, let's say you're riding on the bus for free. There's no victim here. There's not like it's not costing the company or the government or whatever anymore. You're the victim. That's from the moral. Okay. So if you use the philosophy of Thomas Hobbes, where it's all about not hurting others, people, because we don't have a society of people hurting each other, then morally, ethically, what's wrong with stealing where there's no victim? And if you're going to do what Mayor is saying, and you're going to try and say that when you work for something, you earn it, and you kind of get something like ownership over it. So what about what something is not worked for? Some massive corporation that's really probably you could even argue stealing from everyone else. As some people will argue. Maybe they deserve to be robbed.
From a completely secular point of view, that aggregates trust, and in order to have a civil society based on Hobbesian law, you have to still trust them.
There is no trust. How much trust is there in society today?
No.
Very little trust. Very little trust. Right, but so everyone's doing everything wrong. So go back to society does it, so it's okay. But if you walk into CVS or whatever, and here they have only these checkout counters, you could walk out, by the way, and they're not even gonna do anything. They don't chase after you for petty theft. The workers are not allowed to. So theoretically, you can walk out, or you can pretend you can pay for 2 items and take 3. Theoretically, if someone's watching the cameras, I guess they would notice, right? Is CVS going to really suffer? They have insurance anyway. They get is that a tube of toothpaste or whatever? Is it going to make a difference in the bottom line? Is anyone lose their job over it? No one's going to lose their job because they're down the tube of toothpaste.
What is the person gaining though? What do you?
A free tube of toothpaste. What do you mean?
Yeah, but that's not. I mean, you're ruining your reputation.
But nobody knows. Do you think they'll get away with it? No one will know that you stole it. And then they catch you. Say, "Whoops, it was a mistake. I paid for I didn't realize I didn't pay for the toothpaste." They're not going to arrest you over a thing of toothpaste. Today in New York, it's not even considered a crime. It's under, I think, $500, whatever. It's not even considered a misdemeanor. Yeah, I know the exact laws. It's like you won't have any record. There'll be nothing on your. Don't really go arrested with a mugshot. So.
It starts with a two.
Oh, no, now you're going way above my pay grade. Yeah, I personally would agree with you, but you're going way above my pay grade. We're not here to discuss whether or not California is making good decisions, wrong decisions. That's totally not the objective of tonight's conversation. The objective is to understand that when you begin with a premise that my morality comes from what society does or what my conscience says, so in a case where society has, so to say, almost normalized stealing a tube of toothpaste from CVS, and where I don't feel like I'm hurting anyone, my conscience, I don't have a guilty conscience stealing toothpaste from CVS. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They don't know the difference. I can even justify, by the way, let CVS hire more people to stand behind the counter. I don't have to go sit fight with a machine that breaks down every day. So you give people the jobs instead of the computers, and then it'll be harder to steal. You want to save money on labor, but I heard people say this. You want to save money on labor by having machines instead of people. Okay, so you'll pay the cost in having making it easier to steal from Walmart. And people do that. I'm telling you, people do that in Walmart all the time. That's part of Walmart's budget. Part of Walmart's budget is theft. They count the cost, pay X amount for electricity, and in their budget is a line item of a lot. I don't know the number. I once saw a number of like how much is in their budget for things that can be stolen.
You know what? Maybe you as a thief could be the victim because you go back home and you say, "Oh, my gosh, I did this, I got away with it. What else am I capable of here?"
So Mayor kind of said the same point, like it's like the beginning point. Yeah, so it's so easy to steal the toothpaste. Next time you steal 10 toothpaste, and then you start selling it in the black market, and then you start stealing computers, and yeah, I don't. There's some truth to that, but fundamentally, if the only reason why I don't steal is because it will harm someone or it will destroy a functioning society. So if I can steal without harming anyone, and without ruining society, without causing anyone any loss, and no one will lose anything because of it, no one's actually losing from their pocket if I steal from Walmart. So I should be, it's easier for my conscience to justify it. In the Torah, there's a radically different concept to why you can't steal. Something that is yours not for any logical reason. It's not yours because you worked for it, because you earned it, because if I take it from you, I'll hurt you, and then someone will hurt me. The reason why I can't steal is because what I own was given to me by God, and what you have was given to you by God. And if I take from you what God gave you and not me, I'm violating my belief in God running the world. That's why stealing is wrong. You have what's yours because God said it's yours. And by me taking from you, it's not me taking from you or me taking from Walmart. It's me violating God's plan for the world, for the universe, and me taking something that God doesn't want me to have, that God didn't give me, something that God gave you. And in fact, I don't want to go too deep into it right now. On the deeper spiritual level, the reason why you have something, the reason why you won the lottery, perhaps, the reason why you own this company is because you have a spiritual connection to these things, and there's spiritual sparks in the money you won in the lottery that you have to elevate them to refine, etc., which is why God gave you the lottery, not me. So for me stealing the lottery from you, either you didn't work for it, it's still going, and if it's still just a little bit, it won't hurt you because you got $100 million and I stole $100. I'm still violating God. Yes.
I went to Walmart, said I will look at Hispanic gifts, and when I wanted to check out my credit card, it was self-checkout.
Mhm.
I couldn't do it, so I went to somebody that was working that on their cell phone. The young person, I said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but I can't seem to do this." And she went over, and she couldn't do it. She's getting paid, that's what I'm trying.
Yeah.
The cell phone. So she said to me, "Here, you have a receipt. I didn't pay for it. Go, no, I didn't have the receipt. Go out, you'll get it." I said, "I won't be able to get past the person at the exit because I don't have the
Right.
receipt." So I said, and I left my telephone in my car. So she said, "Go, don't worry about it." And I walked out of the Walmart with all these items to my car.
I'll repeat the story for those watching on Zoom in a second. Yeah. Finish the story. I know the story.
Said the same thing. what just struck me.
Linda's saying a story basically that she was in Walmart, she couldn't pay, and the worker said, "Okay, don't worry about it. Just go. It's like, you're making them work too hard, trying to pay for the stuff." And the workers in Walmart telling her to leave. In short, that's the short version. And then you went back to pay because you couldn't. Linda went because Linda's an ethical person from the Torah.
There are examples, multiply this, couple $100 times all these people in the country that go to the stores and just walk out.
Without paying. The workers told you to leave. So anyone with a conscience will say, I didn't steal. The worker told me to go. So I have a good conscience, and I still violated the God-given rules of what's mine and what's not mine. Good, because you have been taught a lot of Torah values. So let's read, guys. Let's go further. Text number 4a. Wow, I just see the time. Look at this. 4a says the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. It is forbidden to rob or steal anything at all according to Torah law, whether from a Jew or from a non-Jew, whether from an adult or a minor. This applies even if the non-Jew caused pain to the Jew, even though the amount worth less than a coin. A prut is like a small, tiny coin of minimal value, which is the smallest unit of the Jewish law, treats as legally significant money, is not classified as monetary property, and would not obligate formal repayment. Taking even that amount is still prohibited from the outset. Even someone whose life is in danger, who needs to take another person's property in order to save themselves from death, may only take it with intent to repay. For although all prohibitions in the Torah are set aside in the case of a life-threatening danger, except for idolatry, forbidden sexual relations, and murder, it is still forbidden to save oneself with another person's money with the intention of being exempt from payment. Rather, it must be taken with the intent to repay when one is able, since repayment is possible. This is amazing. I'm going to keep on going. Even taking with intent to repay is only permitted in the face of life-threatening danger. But where there is no such danger, it is forbidden, even with intent to repay with something better than what was taken. This includes taking for medical treatment of an illness that is not life-threatening, or to save oneself from the pressures causing physical suffering that is not life-threatening. It is even forbidden to steal on condition of paying double compensation. Wow. Do you understand? This is the opening laws of the entire Jewish code of law on stealing. This is the first law. Law number 1, law number 2. And here, halacha is telling us that each and every single one of these most common human justification for taking what is not ours, it's just a few dollars, it's pocket change, and they messed up first, or they wronged it back, they wronged me, or we say, I'll pay back later, it's forbidden unless your life is in danger, and saying, I'll get something better later on is forbidden, unless there's no danger to your life. And even when you're going to benefit them, and I'll pay them more than they borrowed from them, that's forbidden without permission. And even if it's an emergency, you do not get the right to keep it, only to borrow it till be repaid back. Why? Because at the end of the day, the Torah's response is, even though you're going to do something else, even though you're in danger, even though whatever it is, they won't care, it is not yours. And in fact, the next halacha, text 4b, which I'm going to just say outside, is that even when you enter another person's orchard, a friend of yours, who you know will tell you take anything you want anytime. If you walk into his house and you open his fridge without his permission and take something out of his fridge, even though you know that if they'll be home, they would say 100%, take whatever you want, that you're a good friend, you are not allowed to take it without their permission. Because at that moment, since you're taking without their knowledge, that would be considered stealing. Even though they'd be happy, even though they're your friend. At this moment, it's not yours. They didn't give it to you. You can't take it without their permission. This is a fundamental objective right and wrong. It's yours, God gave it to you. It's not yours, God didn't give it to you, you can't take it. That doesn't change, not when society changes, not when the standards of right and wrong change, not when your conscience. It's a bedrock foundation that will last forever. Okay, if that's clear, we're going to move on to the next of the 7 Noahide laws, which is murder. Now, murder is pretty bad, but I'm going to ask you the same question that seems like a pretty obvious question. What is the value of a human life? Now, in our world, how do we determine value in our society? We invent things, right? We live in a society of innovation and invention. So we would assume that our value is also something that we create. So you would think in America, how do you determine value? By output. So some person's worth $500 an hour, and some person's worth $25 an hour. Why? Because I produce more. I'm just flipping burgers, not me, God forbid, but someone's flipping burgers at McDonald's, and someone is I don't know, a high very very specialist surgeon. So the surgeon making I don't know $500 an hour, more whatever it is, and the guy flipping burgers is making $25, maybe not even $25 an hour, probably less, whatever they're making, right? So in American society, we determine value by output. However, in Judaism, value is not something that we're creating by what we learned and what we accomplished and what we're producing. Rather, value is an inherent part of our very identity from the very moment we are born before we even begin to do anything. We know the famous verse that Mindy already mentioned before, text number 5. God created the human in his image. In the image of God, he created the human being, male and female. He created them. What is that verse telling us? That we are of divine origin. And therefore, because we are of divine origin, because we are created in the image of God, we have inherent value, which is not the normal way of most societies. How do most societies function? Hierarchy, right? That's just all societies, a hierarchy. You have the guys on the top, the masters, the kings, the rulers, the noblemen, and then you had the different levels of serfs and slaves and prisoners, etc. And Torah is telling us, Judaism is telling us that human worth is not earned, it's not conditional, rather, it's absolute and it's inherent. So, once you have this foundational principle that all human beings are inherently valuable because we are created in the image of God, so then you can't claim that some lives are disposable. You cannot create a rational justification for genocide. You can't argue that one life is worth more or worth less than another, because the value of a human life is objective. It's inherent. It's not up to how I view your life, what I think about you, whether I think that you're talented or capable or handicapped, God forbid, or disabled, God forbid. Other societies did that. If you were handicapped, disabled, okay, we're going to kill you. It's a mercy killing because anyway, you're not productive. You're a drain on society. But we understand that every single human being, inherently, from the moment we're born, is an image reflecting the image of God. Yes, ma'am.
Hypothetical. There's a lifeboat. You can take one person. One is a rabbi and one is like a simple person. Which one do you take? I don't even remember. I mean, but it's obviously everybody's is of inherent value. It's not based on output. But what kind of an answer do you need?
So every single human being is valuable. You can't rate the value of people. You can't rate the value of people. We're going to actually talk about the numbers of people soon. Not exactly the question, but soon. So I'm going to skip a little bit ahead to text number 7. It's a beautiful, beautiful Mishnah describing the creation. Go page 63. Describing the birth of the very first human being. You know how man was made? How did God make man? First he made man, and then from him he did a surgery, took out the rib of the male, and created the female. Hence the famous joke, the very famous joke about this surgeon and the anesthesiologist and the engineer and the politician who are all arguing which profession came first. So the surgeon says, look, I'm the first profession in the Torah. First profession in the Bible is God doing a surgery, taking the rib of a man and making Eve. So the anesthesiologist said, what are you talking about? Before the surgery, someone had to put Adam to sleep. I put him to sleep before he did the surgery. And the engineer says, what are you guys talking about? Before any of that, someone had to design the world and build the world. Who do you think built the whole world and designed everything? Me, the engineer. And the politician says, what are you talking about? Before the engineering of the world, it says in the Torah, there was chaos. Tohu vavohu. The world was chaos. Who do you think made the chaos? So, in the beginning, there was one man. And then what happened? God made two. Why couldn't God just make two to begin with? Just make two to begin with. God knew he would do two. By the way, every single other creature was created male and female. God didn't make a male lion and then from the male lion make a female lion. God created male lions and lionesses, I don't know, and male sheep and female whatever, male dogs and female at the same time. Says the famous Mishnah in the Talmud and Sanhedrin. It's a very famous Mishnah that's extremely valuable and extremely important. Page 63. Initially, a single human being was created to teach us that one who destroys a single life is considered to have destroyed the entire world. And one who sustains a single life is considered to have sustained the entire world. Also, this maintains harmony among humanity, so that one person cannot say to another, my ancestor is greater than yours. And this tells of God's greatness. When a person mints many coins from the same mold, all the coins are alike. But God mints every person through the mold of the first human, and yet no two people are alike. Therefore, every person must say, the world was created for me. This is a very powerful Mishnah. Let's unpack this masterclass in ethical reasoning, line by line, point by point. Point number one. What's the first reason that the Mishnah explains? Why was man created alone and only afterwards given a female? What's the Talmud Mishnah saying? What's the first paragraph in the text we just read? To tell you that a single human being has the value of the entire world. That's the opening answer. The reason why God didn't just make a happy couple living in peace and harmony together from the beginning was because then you might think that in order for the world to exist, you need to have harmony and people together. You should know that one individual, single person is an Olam Maleh, an incomplete entire universe. The whole world was created for just one human being. The whole world is worthwhile for just one single human being. This gives you a very, very clear understanding of the value of even one single life. And therefore, why we have this famous statement of the Talmud, that he who saves a life, it's like he saves the whole world. Because the whole world was for one life. Very powerful. The second point the Mishnah is making is that why was the world, man created as one? What's the second reason in the Mishnah? So no one could say to another, my ancestor is greater than yours. We need to have harmony among humans. And this is a direct refutation of racism and any form of hierarchical thinking. And I'm a better race than you, my lineage is better than your lineage. You go back far enough, we all come from the exact same place. No one can say I come from a better place or a different place than you. So not only does the creation of one human being show the value of one human being, it shows the equality of each and every single human being. Okay? This idea, by the way, is in a beautiful letter from the Rabbi to, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Arkadiusz Rybicki. He was a Polish politician in 1991. Just for the context, in 1991, a group of drunk Polish teenagers attacked the synagogue in Warsaw. They smashed the windows and they actually wounded. There was an older person in the synagogue. They hurt him, and so police arrested some of these teens. So there's a politician at the time who wrote a letter to the Rabbi, so to say, apologizing for this anti-Semitic incident and promising to do whatever he could to try and help. So the Rebbe responded to this non-Jewish Polish politician. And the part of the letter is here, text number 8. The Rebbe writes to him on text number 8. I would like to add that last month, in the beginning of Tishrei, we ushered in the current Jewish New Year of 5752 with the celebration of Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of the creation of the first man, Adam. Our sages of the Talmud explain why the creation of man differed from the creation of other living species, and why, among other things, man was created as a single individual, unlike other living creatures created in pairs. One of the reasons our sages declare is that it was God's design that the human race, all humans, everywhere and at all times, should know that each and all descend from the one and the same single progenitor, a fully developed human being created in the image of God, so that no human being could claim superior ancestral origin. Hence, they would find it easier to cultivate a real feeling of kinship in all interhuman relationships. Indeed, this is beautiful. Although Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish festival, our prayers for a Happy New Year include also all the nations and dwellers on earth. And true happiness includes everyone's peace and prosperity, both materially and spiritually. Beautiful. Not going to show the video now. I'll be in the email channel tomorrow, but we don't have time. But I saw an interview with someone from the New York Times, a Jewish reporter, who wrote, he came to the Rebbe several times. And one time he came to the Rebbe was right before Rosh Hashanah. And he stood up there like, it was outside, he was talking to the Rebbe, and he had a non-Jewish black woman actually with him who was a photographer. Her name was Ruby something, it's in the video. And the Rebbe gave them both blessings, they gave them both dollars to give to charity. And then the Rebbe wished him a Happy New Year. And then later, the Rebbe had Rabbi Krinsky, who was one of his secretaries, call this Jewish reporter to tell him, when the Rebbe said Happy New Year, didn't only mean you, but also Ruby, the non-Jewish photographer, that she too is also included in the wishes for a Jewish New Year, because all of humanity is born on Rosh Hashanah. That's the birth of Adam, the first of all human beings, and therefore it's a time to pray for all human beings, including this non-Jewish female photographer, black photographer. It's a beautiful story. I'll send the video out later. And the point is, we all come from the same place to allow us to be able to live in harmony, everyone together. Next, the third thing, why does the Mishnah tell us, the third reason, why was the human race created from one single person? So here the Mishnah brings a beautiful analogy. Ostensibly, what's the analogy for? To show how the greatness of God, but it also shows the uniqueness of the individual. What does it say in the Mishnah? That when a person mints many coins from the same mold, I'm going back and reading the text, all the other coins are alike. But God, what does God do? He mints every person through the mold of the first human, and yet no two people are alike. I'm not different from you because I come from one place, you come from a different place. Me and you come from the same place. The reason why I'm different than you is because God wanted me to be unique with my own talents, my own skills, my own personality, my own quirks, my own humor, my own weakness, my own insecurity, my own generosity, whatever it is that I have. And God wants you to have your unique personality with your unique gifts and talents and looks and skills and abilities, etc. So the reason why we are all unique and irreplaceable is for no other reason other than what? That God made us each unique and irreplaceable. And that's why indeed the Mishnah ends by saying a shocking statement. Therefore, a person must say, the world was created for me. Meaning, isn't that like the height of arrogance? No. A person has to understand that I have a unique purpose that no one else can fulfill, and I need to do my job. Okay. That, my friends, is the Jewish foundation of not killing, which is that every single human being, Jew and non-Jew, makes no difference, is in the image of God. And therefore, killing one person is killing the image of God in the world. And that's why it's forbidden. So, in a secular society, in a secular system, what is a murder? It's a crime against the victim, it's a crime against society. But Torah is telling us, when you go back to the Ten Commandments, and we have them side by side, right? The ones that are about between us and God, between us and man. You look at commandment number 1, and you look at commandment number 6, the first on the first tablets, and the first on the second tablets. The first one is, I am the Lord your God. And the first on the other side is, do not murder. And there's a direct link. You can read the commandments not 1, 2, 3, and then 5, so whatever. You could read them 1, 2, side to side. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are no numbers actually. I put numbers in there. There's no numbers in there. could read it that way. Why are they put side by side? To tell you that killing a life is actually a violation of God's presence in the world. You're diminishing and you're destroying the presence of God in our world, which is why the Torah tells us after the flood, when God told Noah about not murdering in these 7 Noahide laws, what does God say? Look at text number 9. I will demand an accounting for your lifeblood, for God made the human in his image. And that's why text number 10 tells us that the first tablet says, I'm the Lord your God. And opposite, it says, do not murder, to teach us that anyone who spills blood, the Torah considers it as if they have diminished the stature of the Almighty. Okay, my friends. You know the famous trolley problem? You know the trolley problem? I kind of mentioned it a little bit before. The trolley problem we actually discussed in the JLI class a few years back called the dilemma. Let's say you're driving, you're the conductor of a train. You're driving the train and you see 5 people tied up on the track in front of you. And if you were to pull a lever, you could take the train off the main track to a side track, but the side track has 1 person tied up there. Do you pull the lever? Knowing that by you pulling the lever, you're going to kill an innocent person? Or, but you could save 5 people. Or do you let fate do it, what fate does, and you just do nothing because you can't be involved in actively causing an innocent person to die? Pull the lever, says Cheryl, because you're thinking very logically, very intellectually, and from a utilitarian perspective, 5 lives is much worse than 1 life. So you have a net gain. You save 4 lives by pulling the lever. Right? That's...
I think you're getting at. You want us to say that it doesn't matter because if you kill 1 person, it's like killing the world. So if you kill 5 people, it's equal.
You're very smart, Cheryl. Yeah, very good. You're figuring it out. Very good. Cheryl has just figured it out. That although from a secular perspective and secular ethics, this is very simple math. 5 dead people versus 1 dead person, you would think it's obvious, pull the lever, because 5 is more than 1. From a Torah perspective, you are not allowed to do anything to cause a life to be killed. You can, by you pulling the lever, you're doing something that will cause the death of an innocent person. And if a human life is infinite in a value, if it has inherent value, there's no, infinite is not more infinite if it's 5 than if it's 1. Math doesn't work that way. Math is only 5 or 1 when we're talking about like physical things, tangible, quantifiable, limited things. The value of a human life is not quantifiable, it's not limited, it's inherent. It's not based on the value it produces. Tell them about like the 5 people, what if the 5 people are all old seniors that are 80 years old, 90, today seniors are 100, okay, 120, and the 1 person's a young kid, or the other way around. What if it's 1 young kid versus 5? The young kid is a whole life. Now you're starting to use utilitarian perspectives. You're starting to do math on something that's not a number, something that cannot be quantified, something that is of infinite value. And that's dangerous. That can't be done. Understand, my friends? Okay. And that's why every life is infinite value. And that's why when a person came to, we have a story in the Talmud, when a person came to Rava and said to him, the governor of my town said to me, kill this person. If not, I'm going to kill you. What should I do? What was the Jewish answer? Rava says to him, let him kill you. You can't kill somebody else. What makes your blood redder than his blood? That's the Jewish perspective. My life is of infinite value. True. And your life, and his life, and her life is also of infinite value. What makes my blood redder than that person's blood? You cannot weigh your own universe against someone else's universe. You cannot weigh 1 universe against 5 universes. The act of murder is an absolute prohibition because the value of each life is absolute. Make sense? That is the point. Now, we're going to go very quickly to the last of the 3 commandments we're going to talk about tonight, which is the prohibition of not eating the meat torn from a living animal. Up until this point, we've been focusing on the value of human life. But the Torah's value system is not limited to humanity. Because if our value comes from God, then everything that comes from God is valuable. Very good, Lenny. If everything that comes from God is valuable, sorry, if everything's value comes from God, then everything that comes from God, which is basically everything, has value. And therefore, creation, from a Jewish perspective, not just raw material waiting to be exploited for my benefit. Animals are not expendable things that are just there for my pleasure or for my benefit. Yes, God did allow me to take benefit from the animals and to use the animals for my needs. And God allowed us to kill an animal to eat it and to use it for our consumption. But at the same time, we have to remember that where did that animal come from? From God. And therefore, we can only use it for what God gave us to use it for. To cause any pain along that process, to torture that animal, to eat from that animal while the animal is still alive, to not have dignity for the animal, mean that we've forgotten that that animal also comes from God. And this is why the Torah tells us, text 14, page 72, we are not allowed to eat a limb from a living animal. We are commanded not to eat a limb taken from a living creature, meaning a limb that was cut from an animal while it was still alive. One of the roots of this mitzvah is so that we not train ourselves in cruelty, which is an especially repulsive trait. In truth, there is no cruelty greater than cutting off a limb of flesh from a living animal while it is alive before you and eating from that animal. This prohibition applies in all places and at all times to both males and females. It is one of the 7 commandments that apply to all the people of the world. And that's why we have stories. We see how seriously the Talmud takes the feeling of empathy that we need to have for creatures of God. So much so that we have a story in the Talmud, in text 15, about a calf that was being led to slaughter. And it ran away from the slaughterer, from the shochet, and it buried its head in the cloak of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, hoping that the great rabbi would have mercy on the calf. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says to this animal, go to be slaughtered because that's what you were created for. Now that's a true statement. That's what the animal was created for. But because he lacked empathy, because he didn't show any compassion to the animal that was suffering, you know what happened? In heaven they said that since he did not show mercy, suffering should come upon him. That's powerful. And he suffered as a result of not showing empathy to that animal. Until one day, the maidservant of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was sweeping the house, and she was about to sweep away some young weasels. He said to her, leave them alone, for it is written, his mercy is upon all his works. And they said in heaven, since he has shown mercy, we shall show mercy to him. He showed empathy. He showed empathy to this creation, to recognize that this animal is created from God, and therefore because it's from God, it has the inherent value of God within it, and therefore we have to treat them with compassion and not just with utility. So if they're invading your space, you can kill them, but not in the way of torture, not in the way of it has to be. Well, you're not going to eat them. You're not going to eat them. Cockroaches can bring germs and diseases. So yes, you're allowed to kill a cockroach if you need. But ideally, if you're really compassionate, you should pick it up and take it outside. And let me conclude, my friends. I know I went over time, so let's conclude. What did we accomplish tonight? We're gonna wrap up right now. What do we establish tonight? We started by asking where morality comes from, right? And we tested the limitations of logic, limitations of conscience, and limitations of social consensus, and found that none of them can sustain morality on their own. Only when our values are anchored in God does morality become absolute, stable, non-negotiable. And therefore, when the stealing is wrong, why? Not because of some social contract, not because it will harm someone else, but because what I have is given to me by God. You can't take that from me because God gave it to me. Our ownership is anchored in divinity. We then spread the circle to understand the same prohibition applies against murder because of the absolute worth of the human life created in the divine image. And then we spread that to all creatures. Every creation made by God has divine value. Even if we don't see it at the time, Every creature has value. I can conclude very quickly with the story you asked about the spiders. Famous, beautiful story of the Medrash, where King David was a young shepherd, he wasn't a king yet. And he saw the spiders in the trees making webs. And he asks God, what's the value? Why did you create a spider? What does a spider give the world? It's a disgusting, icky little creature. And God says to David, you'll see one day, you'll see how the spider is very valuable. And then one day, after David married Michal, the daughter of King Saul, and his father-in-law, Saul, was crazy, he wanted to kill him. It's a long story. And then King David had to run away for his life. He's hiding in the cave. And right after he ran into the cave, spiders came and made a spider web right in the doorway, the entrance of the cave. And then a few hours later, the soldiers of King Saul came running by, and they were about to go look in the cave where he was hiding, and they saw the spider webs. They said, no one came here because, look, it's all full of spider webs. We don't need to search in this cave. When they passed by the cave, and that's how his life was saved. And he realized, he prays to God, he said, every single thing that God made has value. Every single thing that comes from God has value because it's from God. That's its value. And that, my friends, is how we need to live our lives, with that recognition and appreciation for the godliness existent within everything that exists in the world. Good night, my friends. Laila Tov. Thank you very, very much. Love the applause. Let me stop the recording. Any questions?